And now, live from Level 5 Productions on the island of Milleronia, it's The Larry Miller Show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and everyone who really wants good seats for the World Series. Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Larry Miller Show. I'm Larry Miller, but in a way, aren't we all? And boy, oh boy, is it ever good to be back on Milleronia. And Colonel Jeff feels the same way, and so do our doggies, and so do my wife. We love Milleronia. And we love that you know about Milleronia. And one of these days, folks, you know what? When I decide to open tourist gates and bring everyone by I love, which is all of you, all the listeners and all the fans, I hope you decide to sign up. Boy, it's a beautiful day here. Yes, I know I control the weather, but it's still beautiful. And whew. Boy, oh boy, what a nice time of year to come to Milleronia anyway. And, of course, well, my happiness as always is because of the Lynn Sorensen Orchestra and the Stephanie Kosef Dancers, featuring boy tenor Brad Simpson asking the musical question, when percussionists in the United States Marine Band are discharged, are they drummed out of the Corps? That's a good one. I like that one, Brad, and the Colonel liked that one, too. That's sharp and witty. And as to the question, though, no, not exactly. They are not drummed out of the Corps. As my son, the Marine Corporal, and all his Marine mates know, every Marine is a Marine forever. And that's true. You can never be drummed out, and even after you retire, you're still a Marine. And every Marine from private up to the head of the Corps and to the general there. Everyone knows that. You may be played off the stage, but never drummed out of the Corps. And, boy, Semper Fi. Anyway, that's a good one, though, Brad. And you know what? It reminds me also that we need some more Marine things built here on the island. We have a lot of things that, memorials and statues that respect the service. And we'll always have those statues, even though some other places take them down. We will not. And so when you come here as a visitor, you'll see them. True, 90% of them are of me, but I don't feel bad about that. I think I should have my share of, statues that show respect and affection and fear. Yes, and fear. And by the Larry Miller Store. That's right. I'm so glad to be back in the Larry Miller Store. And we have great items, folks. We really do know. It starts, the first thing we did was the famous LMDS, Larry Miller Drinking Society logo on the Drinking Society shirt, and our semi-secret slogan, Nominum Quid Geminus, which means, you call that a double? That's a good one to have. You don't have to be rude or, too loud, but, you're in a bar and you've asked for a double, and that drink the bartender puts in front of you is not a double. It's a single with maybe a tiny bit more, but it's not what you wanted. It's not what a man or a woman wants to drink when either of them asks for a double. And that's why the idea came up. What do we have to have so that in Latin, that means you call that a double, and that's nominum quid geminus? Get one of those. And you know what? And this is one of our new ones. It's called the Keep Calm and Larry On shirt, the T-shirt. It's not just a mantra for life. It's the motto sensation that's sweeping the nation. That's what Colonel Jeff felt, and he's right, and I still like saying that. And I love that from England from the war days. Keep calm and carry on. But you know what? From the war from the Nazis, killing everybody flying over there. But ours is great. Keep calm and Larry on. And finally, show how tough you are, which is what you want, basically. Let's be honest. Show how tough you are with the brand new shirt that says, I survived volcano number 2, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. And just surviving volcano number 2, by the way, I can tell you. And you ought to know already, but that's not easy to do. And if someone you know did that, if one of your grandparents came here and survived volcano number 2, you should have a T-shirt that says they did. And all of our shirts are printed on demand, by the way, so you can choose from a variety of colors, and they're available in gentlemen's and ladies' cut T-shirts, and even doggies. We have a size for doggies. So, frankly, we're a can-do store. Now, what you have to do is you go to the LarryMillerShow.com/store. That's LarryMillerShow.com/store. And, go there and buy something neat. It really helps us, and we're happy about it, too. So, you know what? Go to the Larry Miller store. Go there now. We thank you. And by the way, all you have to do also is you can get there from our website, right? And our website, as you know, is LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. Boy, that sounds great. And the final World Series game, by the way, coming tonight, Game 7. And I think that added share with in that what you had there, that and then it goes up, it really gets stronger. I think that's where they hang someone. And that's the way it is. That's the World Series, folks. Wherever you are, whatever your home city is, sometimes you might get hanged. People say hung sometime, but they're wrong. It's hanged in the past tense. And at any rate, so go to the Larry Miller store, and thank you, folks. It means a lot to us. And that brings me to my favorite part of the show, the joke of the week. And this is a good one. It's wonderful to tell a joke to you, to pass it on. And if you like it, pass it on to your loved ones, to your family, to your friends. And the Colonel and I like this one very much. There's an elderly Jewish man walking down a street in New York, and he sees up ahead, coming at him, is an Italian funeral. And he's looking and he's curious because it's some very traditional, carriages there. There's one, the first one is, it's black and it has the big wheels turning, and then has those lamps that look like they're from the 19th century on the side, one on each corner. And he's standing there in respect. He takes off his hat and watches them go by. And the one behind that, because there are two carriages, and there's another carriage just like the first behind the first one. And he's never seen that. And right behind those two carriages is an old Italian man in a black suit with a black tie, and he's got his dog on a leash, and the two of them are walking behind the carriages. And behind him, by about 50 feet, there's a line of 200 Italian men in black suits as well. And here's something he's never seen. So he goes out into the street and goes up to the man behind the hearses there. And the old Jewish man says to him, I'm sorry to interrupt the procession here. You've obviously lost someone important, someone you love here. Do you mind my asking? I've never seen a procession like this. What does it all mean? And the old Italian man sighs and says, well, my wife and I were having a fight, and the dog got into it. He just jumped up and attacked my wife and tore her to pieces. And that's what happened there. And the old Jewish man says, "Oh my God, I'm sorry to hear that. And who's in the second hearse?" And the Italian man says, "That's my mother-in-law, because as she heard the rumpus, that she came running in there into the living room and saw what was happening, saw her daughter was dead, and she went nuts and she screamed and she got mad at me and she hit me and she went to kick the dog, and he got mad again and jumped on her and killed her the same way, just ripped her apart." And the old Jewish man says, "Good Lord, that's unbelievable. That's all amazing." And then after just a couple of seconds, he says to the old Italian man, "Can I borrow the dog?" And the old Italian just hooks his thumb behind him and says, "Get in line." We thought that was a pretty good joke. Get in line. Can you borrow it? Fine. Get in line. You're not the first one. Well, Colonel Jeff and I like that one, and I hope you do too. And again, if you do, pass it on. And that brings me to my second favorite part of the show, the Poetry Corner. That music is nice. It's too lovely for funeral music, I think, but it's awfully nice. This is a terrific poem, folks, by the great Edgar Allan Poe, and it's called El Dorado. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long, singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. "Shadow," said he, "where can it be, this land of El Dorado?" "Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow, ride, boldly ride," the shade replied, "if you seek for El Dorado." Isn't that nice, folks? El Dorado by the great Edgar Allan Poe. And if you need to know more about who he is, by golly, you're not reading the right things. A great American poet and writer from the 19th century. Great fella. And that brings me to my third favorite part of the show, the magic movie moment. That music's great too, by the way. Again, this is a great movie. Speaking of great things, it's called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington from 1939, directed by... Where do you hear this list of great talent? Directed by Frank Capra, starring James Stewart, Jean Arthur, Claude Rains, Beulah Bondi, Thomas Mitchell, Harry Carey. Oh, what a cast. And Harry Carey, the great Harry Carey, good Lord. Everyone in Hollywood loved him, and he was a great actor. And his son, Harry Carey Jr., is also a great actor and has been in many movies. And I think the last one was Tombstone. And boy, that's a good movie too, about Wyatt Earp. And also, John Wayne gave Harry Carey, the father, a big tribute in his great movie The Searchers at the very end, where there's it's like a Rembrandt shot with the light coming from outside their house in the middle of the Texas prairie. And John Wayne goes outside the house, down the steps, and turns, and as a salute, he put his one arm on the elbow of the other arm, which was a favorite way Harry Carey liked to stand. And it's very sweet to hear that. And, well, folks, you know what? This is a great movie. Please see it if you've never seen it. And my magic movie moment from it is that Jimmy Stewart goes to the Lincoln Memorial at night. He's in Washington. He's been appointed as a senator, and his father's died. And he's from good Midwestern country, and his mother, the great Beulah Bondi. And you know what? They're really trapping him. All the Washington folks are making him look like an idiot. And he doesn't know how to fight back. And he's depressed and he's powerless. And this is the low point in the movie for him, playing Senator Jefferson Payne. And he walks to the Lincoln Memorial at night. And he wants to reach out. He's a very patriotic young man. And in the Lincoln Memorial there, he sees an old black man standing in front of Lincoln in that great chair with his cap off and tears in his eyes. And that old man's affection and gratitude to Lincoln moves Jimmy Stewart to go back to the Senate, the arena, and fight for what's right. It's a wonderful magic movie moment. Please see that movie. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. What a cast. And if you need a greater director than Frank Capra, you're looking for the wrong movies. In any case, folks, you know that why do we make things look worse than they are? I was wondering that because we just had, as you know, Halloween. Last night was Halloween. And it's a very, very prestigious holiday here on Milleronia, but we do it the right way. Everyone is happy. And I don't understand. I swear I don't. When did Halloween become so evil? I really don't. When did that happen? I know I've mentioned Halloween before, but why are costumes and posters always devils and ghosts with horrible faces and vicious animals? When did that happen? What happened to... Well, when I was a kid, we would dress up, and they were all home costumes. We just dressed up in whatever you could make at home. What happened to Superman and Batman? In fact, when did all superheroes become so bad themselves? They're not heroes anymore. They're fighting each other. They're evil enemies of each other. Why? I swear I don't know. And when we were kids, well, we would dress up, sometimes with swimming trunks and put a towel around our neck as a cape. And that was plenty, though. We'd go all around our neighborhood. And you know, if you spend an hour in your own neighborhood, well, you ringing the doorbells or knocking on doors and saying that great kids thing, trick or treat, you know, and that, well, we were happy. We'd get a big bag full of candy and usually one apple. I don't know what happened there. And we sure weren't happy about that as kids. You know what? You wanted to say to the people with the apple, can you hold up on the apple there? Because we have apples in the house. My mom gets them from Daich every day. We're not looking for more apples. It's Halloween. We're looking for candy and candy bars and lollipops. Could you work with that? Seinfeld used to do a bit in his act that the people who own the house would look down at the children and at the door and say, "Oh, what are you supposed to be?" And that the kid's answer was always, "I'm supposed to be home already, all right? Could you just give me some candy?" And you know what? Why do most parents in my neighborhood today over-decorate their front lawns and houses with, oh, you know the one, you know the look, that loads of gravestones and monsters and webs and witches with horrible faces, giant insects, and those webs too, the spider webs that they put up, they put so much work into that. Well, frankly, these things disgust me. They frighten me. And, well, I think the parents who do their houses up like this, don't you think they must be awful and crazy? Why do they do it? They like it, apparently, and do they think that doing it that way makes them, what, cool, artistic? Do they think their kids love it? Well, last night on Halloween, my wife wasn't feeling well, and her back's been bothering her, and she asked if I'd go get her something at Ralph's, the big supermarket we have here. And, of course, I said, no. No, I'm not. I'm just being silly. And although I said that with the door of the studio closed, it's not the kind of thing you want to kid about in your family. But I said, of course I'd go. Now, that was the night also Game 6 of the World Series was on, but I wouldn't. That meant nothing to me. What meant something to me was that my wife wasn't feeling well and needed something from Ralph's. Okay, the game meant something to me. I didn't. But, of course, I go right to Ralph's. And the thing is, I noticed that in my neighborhood, folks, I don't know about yours, but the streets were jammed. Not full, not happy, jammed with kids in their own horror costumes. And these were really elaborately done. And these are things that are, well, I think like $50-$60 at the local costume store. And the kids were walking in groups of 8 and 12 with their parents, and they were not from the neighborhood. I can tell this because I think every kid in our neighborhood is like my kids. They're in college or the Marines, but I think so. But these kids come because they think the streets will be closed off, and they're right. And all the streets were loaded with cars that were just jammed in. There wasn't a single space empty, loaded. Plus, a high percentage of these were cabs, taxis. And these yellow cabs were double parked to wait for the kids and parents and take them home again, wherever that was. And by the way, for whatever it's worth, the cabbies didn't like me out in my car. They thought this should be their night to pull up and double park, and even in the middle of intersections. And so when I had to, go by, I had to, getting something for my wife. Can't you tell I'm not watching the game? And you know what? They didn't like it. They didn't move right away. I got a lot of angry looks. Are you now a Halloween character too? Do you have to do it that way? My wife isn't feeling well and needed a few things. And I was very careful driving. I had to be, because the streets were filled with these large groups of kids and parents strolling along in the middle of the roads. And, they're howling and laughing, and their costumes were pitch black and really frightening and hard to spot. And so, again, why? I've asked that before, but why do we do this? Why has this become such a national holiday? All the candy advertisements on TV are Halloween-y and frightening. Colonel Jeff, by the way, went to a Halloween party Saturday night just a few days ago, back on the mainland, and everyone was dressed up in costumes. And he dressed, by the way, he did a good job. He was very creative. He dressed as Benjamin Franklin if he was a Mexican wrestler. And I laughed when he told me that. I said, all right, that sounds pretty good. Bet you did a pretty good job. And he did. He had the bottom half looking like Benjamin Franklin and with the glasses, but he had a mask on, a big face mask of a Mexican wrestler. And he didn't know any of the other folks at the party because they were friends of friends, and they were all dressed up too. And he said he spent most of the time standing in the living room wondering why in God's name he had done this. Everyone else in the party came dressed like Louis XIV and asked him what he was doing. So why do we do this? No, it doesn't appeal to me. Colonel Jeff did it, and he did it well, but boy, oh boy, everyone else at that party was frightening. And I remember I did Batman and Green Lantern every year when I was a kid. None of us were evil, and they were all homemade, as I mentioned. And after an hour in our neighborhood, that's the way it was every year, filled with candy and one apple. I'd like to go back and find out who the guy was with the apples, because we looked at it when he was smiling. We weren't. And he'd, take an apple out and put it in each of our bags. I said, and I remember we were all thinking, we weren't mean kids, but we wanted to be right then. Hey, Mac, Can you bag it with the apples? And not in our bags. So, you know what? But that reminded me because I was in New York last week. I got a part in a movie, a good part, and the movie's called Second Act, starring Jennifer Lopez and Leah Remini and John Lovitz, and directed by Pete Siegel. Boy, I've worked for him before. He's a great director. And Colonel Jeff and I had planned to do this show by phone and the internet from my hotel. But the computer wasn't working, so we ran a rerun. Well, that happens, as you know. But New York was great. The movie is shooting around New York and Brooklyn and Queens, and most of us were staying where I was, on the Lower East Side. Folks, you know what? I was on Ludlow Street, which connects with Houston Street, East Houston Street. Now, Houston, as you may know, is spelled like Houston. And there's a reason New Yorkers pronounce it Houston. And the reason is, you ever been to New York? That's the reason. People just get it in their heads. Hey, Houston Street. But right at the corner of Ludlow and Houston was a better name, Katz's. That's Katz's Delicatessen. If you've ever seen the movie When Harry Met Sally, and starring Billy Crystal, and oh, what a great cast they have there. And that scene, that famous scene, was shot in Katz's. You know, that where she imitates a woman, well, making love in a very successful way. And Katz's has a sign over there, and hey, this is where it happened. They have great stuff. They have Katz's T-shirts that say their slogan during World War II, because Katz's opened in 1888, and it's still connected to the whole family right through that. And in World War II, 3 of their sons were in the army and in harm's way. They were over in Europe and they were fighting. And so the Katz family decided to start something called Send a Salami to Your Boy in the Army, which is a pretty good thing to do, and it's a pretty good slogan. And they did that, and so many people did that, and you can still do it today. In fact, I thought about that, with my son in the Marines. Well, it's not the Army, as the Marines will tell you. We're not soldiers, we're Marines. But boy, oh boy, it was nice there. You could go there any time of the day, and I did. Where else are you going to go? Because it's the Lower East Side. It's right on Houston Street, and that's where New York used to be huge. That's where New York was what we call New York today, New York City. It's not anymore. That's the Lower East Side. And so there's not a load of restaurants there, but you don't need one, not with Katz's. And they knew me, and I said, boy, it had been a long time since I had been there. You walk in, it was great to be there. And you get on a line with, that's so funny. You cannot beat an heavyset Jewish man carving a pastrami on the counter behind the counter there. And there was one guy who said he asked for what he wanted, because there are lines. There are 5 pastrami lines, and, you say what you want. And the guy says it, and the counterman, the slicer behind the counter, says, he kind of moves his head for a second because of the guy's accent. And he says, "What are you, from England?" And the guy says, "No, Missouri." And then the guy behind the counter just said, "It's the same thing. What's wrong with you? Just say yes next time." And folks, it was funny. The guy was laughing. I was laughing. You can't beat a real deli counterman like that. Sure, anyone. They had, everyone in Spanish. They had Puerto Rican guys there, but they're laughing too, because you cannot beat a funny Jewish counterman. And so go to Katz's, and tell them what you want. They have jars there where you tip them right there. Put a couple of bucks in there and do the right thing. And then you keep going down the line. They always put a couple of pieces. He cuts a couple of pieces of meat right there just for you. Small pieces, like a taste. And he puts them on a plate, and he puts the plate right on the shelf there in front of you. It's about at the height of your head. Folks, there's no better food in history than that. You pick up a piece of that pastrami or corned beef or whatever you want, or, beef brisket, or turkey. Good Lord, chopped liver. It's now admittedly, and not a lot of thin people in that restaurant. It's not where you say, hey, you're looking good. Did you lose 150 or something? But that's all right, too, because that's Katz's. In fact, I sat down at a table. Everyone sits together. And it was two older women. They were sisters. And one was a grandmother, one was her sister. And they were with a couple of the grandchildren who were about 20 years old. And the girl was there. She's very pretty and had glasses. And the grandmother said, make sure, hey, Ina, make sure you have one of these. They're good today. Very good. And the granddaughter said, I'm on a diet. And I said to her, I couldn't resist. I was sitting next to her. I just said, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that sentence has never been said in Katz's in 120 years. That no one has ever said. No one has ever said. And the grandmother laughed and said, he's right. It's Katz's. And I said, you know what? Have something you like here. You're in Katz's. And then you continue, by the way, you're already beautiful, but that's okay. You want to lose more weight? That's good. But have something now. It doesn't matter. The grandmother said, sure, here, eat. We're in Katz's. And she did. She said, well, those look good. And suddenly, of course you're going to say that. Who's going to sit there and say, no, I'm still on a diet? Well, folks, it was great. It was a great 8, 9, 10 days in New York, and I'm going back for more work on the movie. I don't know where I'll be staying, but one of the drivers, one of the van drivers, one of the transpo guys, said to me, she was great, a really wonderful woman. We became friends, and she said, before you leave, go get yourself a Chinese reflexology for your feet. Now, how many times have you heard that? Never? And you know what? I did. The night before I left, last Thursday night, I called down to the concierge in the hotel. I said, give me a nice local place. It's got to be walking distance for Chinese reflexology massage for the feet, where they really, with the feet, where they really work you over there, where they're not afraid to dig in there. And they're not. He recommended, he said, I got one for you. Sunny Chinese Body Works, which is always like one of those great names of, wait, what? But it's fine. He said, now this is not a fancy place, but they know feet like nobody's business. And I said, all right. And I went there, and he was right. I got myself an hour massage work by a little young woman who didn't speak any English. She was Chinese, and he bobbed her head with a smile a lot, and I did. So you get undressed with just your underpants on, and of course no socks. And she started in on the feet. I put some lotion on, and then went in on those feet. And I'm telling you, you can't sleep through that. I'm telling you, and by the way, doesn't look like a strong arm wrestler type, but she knew her stuff backwards and forwards, and I mean, she'd go in with the fingers and get the lotion all over, and then start on the toes, and then run the closed fist up and down the bottom of your foot. Folks, it hurt like nothing. I mean, it was so painful, it went past the word pain into agony. And I'm not kidding, and I'm not a baby. I had to say to her twice during this, because she does it to the toes and the bottom of the feet and the top of the feet. And I said, please, just a little lighter, please. I've never said that in any situation like that. But she said, she nodded and just, okay. And she did it, but she didn't know, poor thing, didn't know what I meant. So she just continued with, the torture. And I said it twice to her, wait, just less, please, just please, a little lighter, less pain. And I think she had once people say it twice, I'll lighten up a little. And then she went up the legs, calf, all the legs, thighs, and I'm telling them up to the shoulders and the neck and around your head and your face, and then down the arms and the hands, and I'm telling you. And then just like at 6:02, she said something I didn't understand it, but folks, that was something else. And I sat up there. She said she walked out and pointed to where my clothes were, and took me a while to get off that table, and I put my things back on. And I'm telling you, I felt like a mountain climber. I felt just fabulous. I walked out, and there was her grandmother there, and she was there too. And I paid them. It was $40 for the hour, and it was worth every penny. I can't tell you how good it was. And I tipped her $10, and same thing, nod and smile. And the grandmother nodded and smiled and said, the grandmother spoke English, so she said, come back, come back. And I said, I'll be back. I said, I'm working on this movie now, and I'm telling you, I'm coming back here. Another couple of trips to New York, and I'll see you again. And I mean it. The Yankees may not be in the World Series, but folks, I'll be back there. And a quick word about the World Series. What is it with beards? What have we done with this? I'm kind of losing my mind over it. What is it with baseball players and beards? And as you know, they're not just little beards or a little eighth of an inch topping on the face there in some kind of shape. These beards are from Tobacco Road, and I mean these beards are from the Hatfields and the McCoys. You've seen them. I mean, for goodness sake, you want to say, look, if you're going on the good luck of having the beard, I can understand that, I guess, sure. But, how about, on the other hand, come on. These things are grotesque. And you want to say to them, no one in baseball, not even in the 1900s, no one did. No one wore beards, not like that. Well, of course, the game's on tonight, and we're having a good viewing of it here on Milleronia. And I'll be watching, and I hope you will too. I don't know what it is with beards, but I know a lot of things, and so do you. Homer is Homer. Pluto is a planet. And folks, remember, as always, if you walked out of bed today and had a job to go to and a home to come back to and someone there who cares about you, folks, the game's over and you've won. Don't grow a beard, but just be happy. We'll see you here next time.